we have the screen. Can we bring the screen, the images up? Right, okay. So there we are. So this is essentially Places and Spaces group. Now the group was set up about 7 years ago. As the name implies, it's interested in covering these sort of unknown or forgotten stories dotted around the town. We know that we have a very strong heritage centre down at the Crescent in the Pavilion Gardens and all that area, but more the outlying areas, and to see what points of interest we can find and describe there. But particularly as the town expands from its fairly small centre out in the outlying areas of Burbage, Harper Hill, Lamerlow, Fairfield, and trying to put these stories into some more permanent form. So the next slide, please. So, as I say, we meet every 6 weeks, volunteers. If anyone wants to come and join us, they'll be very welcome after they've heard these descriptions of our activities. So the next slide. So we've got 4 presentations this evening. I'm Alan Roberts, doing the first one, and we're leading on to the others, describing the range of activities. I guess what we're all trying to do, we tend to see Buxton as a complicated jigsaw with all sorts of bits and pieces scattered around. We're trying to make the picture complete by identifying these and describing them and then moving on. So if we go to the next slide. History and landscape. Those are my particular interests. Coming from a long way off from Buxton, I got attracted by the scenery as soon as we moved here, enjoying the walks on the countryside, on the hills, but gradually got more interested in the details and the history of the surrounding landscape. And I guess that takes all of my spare time even now. Next slide. So this illustrates one of the earlier activities that the group undertook. A few years back, there were plans to build a massive business park in the Cowdale Quarry, the disused Cowdale Quarry. And there were all sorts of objections to it on environmental grounds and whatever. And there was one particular facet of this proposed development, which was to put a tunnel from the disused quarry floor through onto the A6. And this would have had a huge opening to the out of the A6 in Ashford Dale. Some people compared it, said it would have been as big as the opening to the Dartford Tunnel under the Thames. It wasn't very attractive. It's a relatively narrow road, and you have to have room with HGVs turning left and HGVs turning right, all that sort of thing. So they put in an environmental assessment, which to my mind was complete rubbish. Said in effect that Ashford Dale was of no historic interest, no aesthetic interest, the views were terrible, had no environmental interest. It didn't matter if there were 100 lorries a day travelling up and down. So we rallied round, put this little pamphlet again, Ashford Dale, landscape of history, and pointing out all the features that make it interesting. A very short drive from the bottom of Tottenham Park through to the town. And I don't know if it made any difference. Needless to say, the planning application never went through. But I like to think that if there are any applications that came along, that we could provide some sort of background to protecting the environment. And then it's good to be in a position to do so. So that's the pamphlet is still available. And you read the background if you want to. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes. Another early activity of the group was to participate in the Heritage Open Days. This is a national scheme that Buxton wants to get involved with one way or another. And several of the Places and Spaces team started leading walks around the former coal mine site up on the Burbage Edge, that site. And these were quite popular. We had to restrict the numbers and make sure the adequate health and safety and proper training and people leading it and so on. But they proved quite popular, and we produced this thing on Buxton coal mines, a leaflet that we could now buy in the Paul's cabin, and just you go on your own walks and books to describe that part of the countryside, an interesting part of the background. And there's a similar one on the limestone quarries around Buxton and the walking trail that was produced as well. And next slide, please. Yes, one lovely feature of Buxton, particularly come to it the first time, wow, there's all these trees around the bowl where the town of Buxton sits, or Greenlow, the Corber Woods, up on Burbage Edge, and as you're coming up the Ashbourne Road at the bottom of Harper Hill Road and so on. But there was a previous version of this Ring of Trees book, must be like 20 years ago, I think. But it was in need of updating because the trees have changed, environmental things have changed, a lot of building market change, footpath walks have been altered a bit. So the Places and Spaces group, known in this case, did a massive update of the earlier version. The group cooperated, we allocated a section of the trial document had been produced. Each allocated a section to walk and see if it needed any modification. So I got the easy score. I had a fairly short stretch from Corber Road through Corber Woods out to Manchester Road. Did that fairly quickly. But some of the other stretches were quite lengthy, kept people busy. Anyway, the group comments came in part of the editorial process, and this was produced. Next slide, please. Then we were asked to do something related to the whole position of the Buxton limestone industry in the wider context, looking at how to spread how the Buxton lime firms played a big part in the development of local quarries. So there was a Frank Edison who personally did the detailed knowledge of this, and we produced this book for the limestone quarries of Buxton. And then the final slide in this section, please. Next slide. This was another thing. We were looking at Harper Hill, but there wasn't that much information about it. There are small books about Harper Hill. They mainly cover the village itself. But some of the activities that went on there are extremely unusual. They were very important at the time. This strange happening at Harper Hill described the 1917 to 1919 test firing range for mortars before they were sent to France for the First World War. It continued with a description of the Safety and Mines Research Establishment set up there in 1923. It's still there today, having morphed into the Health and Safety Executive site. And then in 1938, the munitions unit, the bombs munitions unit of the RAF was set up. Big bomb store was created there. The concrete structure, its camouflage looked like before the kind of quarry site. That was a very important strategic site in the Second World War. But these are right next door to one another. Less significant one another, these two sites are overlapping each other. So we'll put them together into a book that describes those few very unusual events at Harper Hill. Unfortunately, that is not available in paper form at the moment. It seems to be out of print, but it is available online for anyone who wants to see details. They can details. So thank you. That's section one, but I'll pass over to Carol. Thank you for her presentation.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? If you give me a wave so I know that you can hear me, that would be great. Lovely. Thank you. Right. I'm going to talk to you about some walking guides that myself and Debbie Fox, a fellow member of the Places and Spaces groups, have been working on. When we first joined the Places and Spaces group, we got involved in preparing a quiz about Higher Buxton. And that got us interested in the history of the town and its people, particularly away from the tourist hotspots of the Devonshire Dome and the Crescent. So the idea for the walking trails came from seeing the many ginnels, alleyways and footprint paths that run around the town. And that gave us the idea of a theme of hidden Buxton. We really enjoyed working on this project, and it was a great thing to do during lockdown. We were able to do research from home. We were able to talk via Zoom and emails and phone. And then when the rules relaxed slightly, we were able to get together in person and walk and test out the routes. This is a picture of our first route, which is from Buxton Station to St Peter's Church in Fairfield. And you can see that we've used an old black and white photo of the station in Buxton with its twin, which has long since been demolished on the other side of the road there. And you can also see that the route map is a hand-drawn one, which my friend Debbie led on doing those. And I think that they're really great because they show all of the local landmarks. Sorry, I've lost my buttons to move on to the next slide. Buxton Civic Association published that first route back in the summer of 2021, and we were fortunate that Waitrose, local Waitrose, gave us some funding for that, so that was really good. Shortly afterwards, Alan, who was speaking to you earlier, also published a route in the Hidden series, which was from the Paul's Cavern to Nithen End, and follows the old Packhorse routes down to Paxton's Grand Plan. So you can see the cover for that as well. And again, with the hand-drawn map to show the route. We're currently working on our third route, which centres on Higher Buxton. And we've been amazed that there are so many places of interest in Higher Buxton. And in the end, we've decided that we need to break the route down into two sections. So they can be done at the same time, or they can be done individually, depends on the weather and your inclination at the time. We're hoping that this publication, which is being proofread at the moment, is going to be published in time for the spring fair in May. And we'll have that on the stall, hopefully, up in Buxton Marketplace. So this is the cover for the Hidden Buxton route. And as you can see from the map, we've got it in two sections, a red route and a green route. And they sort of join up in the marketplace-ish area. Another shout out for a slightly more quirky walk around Buxton is the Grotesques of Buxton, which again was published last summer. And that's a really good one to do if you've got children visiting or friends and family that like something slightly unusual. So quite a lot of people following this during the half-term holiday around about in town. For our future routes, we're interested in looking at Burbage. That's got a very different history and background to the rest of Buxton, and also a further route around the Fairfield area, hopefully starting from Ashwood Park. But we've put that one on hold at the moment because we're really not sure what the impact of the current works up at Hogshaw and around the roundabout would have, particularly on giving directions in the route. So finally from me, can you help with these routes? And we're hoping that you can. We really like to use old black and white photos in the routes. So if you've got any old photos of Burbage, Fairfield or Higher Buxton, we'd really like to hear from you, especially if you'd be happy for us to use them in our routes, because they're quite expensive to buy from Picture the Past. And also, if you've got any old stories about Burbage, Fairfield and Higher Buxton, again, we'd be really interested to talk to you and find out about that. It's been really interesting for both of us to find out so much more about our town. So if you are able to help, please get in touch via the Places and Spaces group. And John, if you're ready, I'll hand you over to my colleague John, who's going to take you through the next presentation.
Thank you, Carol. My name is John Evans, and I'm a member of the Places and Spaces group. I'm here tonight to tell you the story of the Water Street Sensory Garden. Could you change slide, please? Carol? Carol?
Yeah, you got it.
That's it, right.
Yep.
Thanks. The idea for the garden came to Diane White in 2016 when she was looking at the site of the old toilet block in Water Street. The toilets had been demolished by the council in 1999, and the site was left to become an eyesore. By 2016, it had become a general dumping ground and an occasional car park for those who were too mean to pay parking fees. The surface of the site was a mosaic of cracked and missing quarry tiles, and the brick rear wall was stained with cement. The surrounding ground was full of weeds. Diane thought that this ugly mess could be turned into a beautiful sensory and wildlife garden, complementing the historic buildings that surrounded it. She had a number of aims in this. Firstly, to provide a peaceful haven in the middle of town, which fitted in with the surrounding street trees and buildings, providing seating for quiet contemplation, and was an attractive space that passers-by could use to unwind on a busy day. Secondly, to provide a green space that would promote users' mental health. Thirdly, to make it a sensory garden with plants and which were accessible to those who were disabled, and that could be smelled, touched, or even be heard, for example, the rustling of leaves in a breeze. And lastly, to enhance the biodiversity of the area, which is under threat both locally and nationally, by accommodating plants, birds, and insects, housing a wildflower area as well as the cultivated garden plants. Because 97% of wildflower meadows have been lost in the last 100 years, we need to promote biodiversity. Sorry, my voice is a bit husky. She sketched a plan for such a garden and showed it to the rest of the Places and Spaces group, who encouraged her and offered her their support. The project gained the approval of the Civic Association Board and later got planning permission from the High Peak Borough Council after a few minor modifications. The Borough Council then leased the site to BCA for a period of 10 years. This was followed next by a fundraising phase. A major contributor to this was the Southwest Peak Partnership, with other contributors from the Bingham Trust, the Hall Bank Trust, Waitrose Community Matters, Morrison's and other local businesses, and some individual BCA members. Next slide, please. Thank you. Work started in June 2019. We were fortunate to have the services of Dave Trotter, an excellent local builder who did the building and landscaping and took a keen interest in the project. The old floor tiles were scrapped and a new concrete slab was cast over the slide. As you can see, if you look down towards the bottom, This slab has channels in it to allow the drainage of the intended central planter to occur without water running from it and staining the paving. The brick wall was sheathed in breeze blocks and rendered, and 3 benches were installed to encourage visitors to sit and relax. To provide wheelchair access, there's a ramp from the level of the street pavement and sufficient space around the central planter for a wheelchair to move around the garden. A guard rail stops wheelchairs or children from trying to exit from the raised end of the site, where there's a drop of a few inches. After the ground surrounding the paved area had been dug over and as many weeds as possible removed, a large carpet of grass preceded with wildflowers was manoeuvred into place high up on the left-hand side of the site. Then many bags of good quality topsoil were spread over the remaining ground to the front left and to the rear of the retaining wall, and then dug in. With the help of a team of Places and Spaces members and their relatives and friends, the cultivated areas were planted with garden plants, some brought in and some contributed by BCM, some bought in, sorry, my eyesight isn't too good either, and some contributed by BCA members. 2 bird feeders were included to encourage visits to the garden, and a bug hotel was provided. The feeders are certainly being used, but it's difficult to check the bug hotel without being intrusive. A thick hedge runs down the right-hand side of the garden, an ideal place for a bird to nest. Next slide, please. Thanks. The garden was officially opened in July 2019 on a day of rain, which was good for the plants, but not much appreciated by the onlookers. The garden is maintained by the same team of volunteers as originally planted it, led by Diane and John White. And there will soon be time for us to feed the plants and to replace the inevitable overwinter losses to ready it for spring. There have been few problems. Although we ringed the wildflower area with lumps of limestone, it hasn't been easy to stop it encroaching onto the cultivated area. Survival of the fittest, I suppose. There's been surprisingly little litter. Modest management costs have been supported by the BCA and by a grant from Waitrose. The garden is used both by visitors and locals, and many have commented to us on how much they value it. On summer afternoons, it's a sun trap and a resting place for people with shopping and prams. People working nearby come to enjoy their lunches there. Because the garden is below the surrounding ground level on 3 sides, it's somewhat sheltered from the traffic noise on St. John's Road behind it. In 2019, Diane received a Heritage Hero Award from the Heritage Alliance for her work on this garden. It was presented at the Tower of London. The following year, the garden was used as a location for poetry readings during the Festival Fringe. And in 2021, it was used as one of the gardens in the Buxton Garden Trail of that year. Next slide, please. And finally, here is Diane with her garden. End.
Right. Well, thank you, John. That's a terrific summary of the garden and its development. Carol, are we okay to go on to the next little bit now, please? Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Just wave or Something, yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that's good. Right. Okay. It struck us as we were working on these issues that there were millions and millions of pounds being spent on huge projects in Buxton, and yet there were still some areas of the town that were vulnerable, neglected, scruffy, grotty, whatever words you like to describe. I sum it up myself as saying not good enough. So we established, well, I think I established something called the principle of quick wins. Like if we could have a proper moan at someone to say, come on, get this sorted out, we could make a lot of little differences, a lot of small improvements. And in doing that, we could perhaps make a big difference to the impression that people have of Buxton when they come here. So next slide, please. And you can see some of our efforts. Starting on the top row, left-hand side, we've got pavements which have been patched and bodged. Going along that top row, we've got, you'll remember with great affection, no doubt, the wall, the fencing that had been put up while they were doing the crescent, and the parking meters that were left in place where there was no possible way of parking. Got rid of them. Bins, more bins, whether it's around the back of shops or Fairfield Road or wherever you go, there's bins. Got to be tidied up, got to be emptied. Overflowing bins do no one any favors. And of course, the Serpentine it had a major problem, and they solved the problem, bless them, by putting up fencing to stop people falling in as the bank collapsed. We were one of the people who campaigned about that to get that sorted out. On the bottom row of this set, the Palace Hotel wall became quite alarming, actually, at one stage. It concerned me, walking past there on the way to work, that if that wall were to collapse, it would really be quite dramatic, because the whole of the garden would perhaps fall down onto the pavement and across the road. And so we got the Palace to fix that. And then up on the marketplace, by the bus stop, there's a little low wall that seems to be a victim of well, it was collapsed and things were missing, bits of it were missing. We got them to fix that. On Fountain Street, there's a electricity substation, which the wall had collapsed. It seems to be a theme. We got Electricity Northwest to repair that, and there were displaced blocks in Spring Gardens. They fixed that by removing the block completely, taking it away and putting a splodge of tarmac in place. But at least it doesn't look quite as bad as it did. One that particularly horrified me was the parking meter near our lovely sensory garden. There's a consultation about parking around the Crescent, and this is one of the meters that was originally there. It worked. They solved the problem of it going out of use by putting a black bag over it and lots of insulating tape. When I complained about it, we got a new black bag, and I don't think that's good enough. Next slide, please. Yeah, moving on. At the bottom of the slopes, I was absolutely astonished that within 3 or 4 days of mentioning that the benches were rotten, they were all fixed. No one was more surprised than me, but that was quite a victory. And the bollards and boardwalk, they have been replaced. Not quite the same as the originals, but at least there's been improvements there. A battle which continues. This is a photo of the little alleyway or entrance area between the cart travel and I think it's a nail bar now, a beautiful Minton floor, which has seen better days. No one seems interested in fixing that. I think it's a shame. It's a shame there's bins and parking. I don't know, it's just not good enough. Broadwalk, there were some lights out. They fixed the lights, digging trenches, put new electricity supplies in, and they left the tarmac there. We got them to finish that off by putting the appropriate covering in so that it all looks nice now. Bottom left, Hall Bank, lampposts, beautiful, ornate, Edwardian lampposts with broken covers that are held in place with insulating tape. Response so far has been to acknowledge there's a problem, replace the insulating tape with a Jubilee clip, and that's about as far as we've got with these lovely bits of historic landmarks. Coming into Buxton from Ashbourne Road, coming up to Harper, there's some fencing which has been like it shows in the photo for some years. Why? What's it for? What does it do? What does it stop people getting to? Why is it there? I don't know. But I keep nagging at people to say we ought to do something about this because it just looks terrible. And no one likes overhanging trees. There's a picture of Diane walking over some trees. She's, how tall are you? 5'4", 5'5". We've been married 40 years. I should know those things. How tall? 5'4". Oh, I wasn't far off. 5'4.5", perhaps. But the trees are very low because not. Anyway, there we go. There's a lot of overhanging trees. 8509. Last year, a tree came down in Pavilion Gardens outside Carlisle House, brought down a lamppost, leaving a very dark and creepy space at the corner of Broadwalk and Fountain Street. I use 8509 because that's the designation of the lamp, but it's not been replaced. So I haven't got a photo of it because it's gone. Next slide, please. We want it back. Here are two more current interests of mine. The first one is some little bobbles at the junction of Bath Road and Broadwalk. Robert Largan's on the case here, very helpful with many of these things, saying it's not good enough. Those are all worn out and they need to be replaced. And finally, my favourite piece of street furniture, just down from the post office on High Street. Again, one of those lamp posts which has been mutilated beyond words. I don't know what was being thought of there, but Derbyshire County Council and High Peak Borough Council are in discussions about what to do about this new style of litter bin. More places are welcome. So if you know of anywhere that really irritates you, please let us know and we'll see if we can add it to my list, the list of the keyboard warrior who is trying to make this slightly better. I'm very conscious of the fact that many of the places in these photos are central Buxton, and I need examples of places in the whole of Buxton, Harper, Fairfield, wherever. So it's over to you guys to help us out here with new ideas that we can work on. Thank you for your attention. Over to Alan.
Yes, question time. If anybody has any questions, before that, I'll thank all the people giving the presentation. Quite a number of issues being covered. And if anybody has any questions and thoughts on that or any information they want to put in, give us a wave. Yes. Steve Blake.
Sorry. Hi, yeah, just taking my mute thing off. Thanks very much for that. I came with two hats. I mean, first of all, just because I'm a BCA member, and I know Debbie, for example, through the Woodland Group, but secondly, because I'm one of the directors in the town team, and I know there's always a lot of overlap in terms of our mutual interests and the things that we do. And I had a couple of things I just wanted to check out. From the point of view of the hidden books and walks, is there a commentary that goes with them, Carol, or is it the map? Sorry, I can't hear you because of the mute button.
Carol?
Yeah, sorry, I've forgotten I'd muted myself. Yes, Steve, there is a commentary. we take people along to a number of places of interest, and we give them a little bit of history about each of the stops and anything particularly quirky that we might think is of interest. So, for example, with the Sun Inn, we look at that from both the front of the building and talk about how old it is, and then we go round Woods Ginnell and talk about the back where the stabling is. So yes, there is a commentary as well as the map.
That's great. I thought there was. I just wanted to check. And the second thing on that was, you know, you said you wanted photographs, Burbage and Fairfield. I'll ask around, you know, because I've got an older friend who lives in Burbage. I've got a friend who's one of the bell ringers and looks after St. Peter's garden, you know, the church garden in Fairfield. So just through their connections. But it also occurred, there was a presentation, a BCA presentation, I think probably 2 years ago now, for the fellow from Burbage who had hundreds and hundreds of Victorian photographs. I can't remember his name. I expect Simon will, but if he can't, I can look back because I'm sure he'd be willing to share some of those photographs. He's a Burbage guy, and he had lots and lots of Victorian photographs of the Burbage area,
that
and
would be fantastic.
a wealth of knowledge, you know, in terms of potentially, you know, doing a route through that patch. Things like, for example, the hidden lime kiln, you know, access to that, where that's located, that kind of thing. So those were those are comments about that. And the other thing, which I think I'll put forward to the other town team directors, is I'm very mindful that the BC, and I'm well aware of this through our litter picking group, Wendy, the advert in the BCA newsletter has been fab from the point of view of new people joining the town team litter picking group. And I think the least we could do in our own newsletter, although we've only got a circulation of 300 or so, is point members with potential interest to, you know, to join the group or to join other BCA groups for that matter, but also the walks, you know, the Ring of Trees, just kind of re-promote them, if you like, on our own newsletter, because I don't see a problem with that, and it could be helpful. So I've got about 4 points. Okay, if I plow up. Can I just say, my daughter's a wheelchair user, and the sensory garden is fantastic. You know, it links with another point which I was going to actually put to John about unloved places. I think it's a tragedy that there's no wheelchair or disabled access to St Anne's Well. You know, that it should be it would be a very relatively easy bit of engineering to make that accessible. Now I haven't actually done any. Well, we did do something about it. Me and a friend of mine, because we're part of the slopes team and the town team, so we've been doing this, you know, and that's included repointing the war memorial, for example, cleaning the war memorial. A few years ago, I cleaned the urns on the slopes. So we did offer the council to do it ourselves. And not surprisingly, of course, we've got absolutely an outback, and that was during COVID. And I just wondered if that was in your sights, or whether you felt because it's a very central location, it wouldn't be something to comment on. It just, you know, it's just tragic, isn't it, that you can't get a wheelchair or a pram or anything up to St Anne's Well. It's an embarrassment.
Yeah, I entirely agree with you there. It's something we ought to be looking at. I think the way of approaching that is directly with the council and get Robert Largan on side and let's see where it takes us. Great idea.
Yeah, I think it would be, and it fits again, doesn't it, with the access in the sensory garden. You know, that makes such a difference. And then the last bit was again for your good self, John. Again, through a contact a little while ago, I was doing a talk to the WI in Harper Hill, and one of the older residents there inquired after a stone trough, which used to be on the marketplace where the butcher's is, and now there's a couple of forms, I think they're the bus stops, as to whether anyone knew of its location and what had happened to it, because it sounded like quite a historic trough, and she remembered as a girl, you know, people would get, I don't think the people actually got drinks, but you know, the dogs and whatnot got drinks from it, and it was, you know, a bit of a feature.
Right, I see one of our guests tonight is a friend of ours, Trevor Gilman.
Oh, hi, Trevor. Yeah.
I'll be sure to see if I can pick Trevor's brains about that, or Alan, of course, who's sat next to me here, and let's see if we can sort it out. I mean, it's something the Buxton Group were involved in doing, the restoration of the fountain thing in that was sat in a council yard. Trevor, any thoughts?
I'm just sorting myself out, John. We're away from Buxton at the moment, so we're having a lash up with a computer. There's so much of stuff and television screens in the hotel. I remember it being talked about by the Buxton Group, definitely, but I can't remember the outcome, whether it was positive. Perhaps Joanne would be able to help with that.
Okay, well, we can certainly put it on the list, and let's see where it takes us.
And while I'm on, the lamppost on Broad Walk, I walked past it very soon after, and I've got 1 or 2 photographs of the lamppost and tree, all mixed up together.
Oh, right, that'll be good.
I'll try and pass them on to you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think probably I've got a photo of it somewhere, but I thought for the purposes of the presentation tonight, it was more effective to have an empty space than.
Well, that's right, but this is one of the smashed up top of the lamppost with a tree spread all over it.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
Show it up to a tea, I think that would.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. I'll look out for that.
I'll get it to you. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any more questions anyone would like to raise? Well, otherwise, I'll say thank you all for participating. We hope you've had an interesting evening. We hope we've got some points. Sorry, I thought somebody raised their hand. No, thank you for participating, and we look forward to joining you at future Civic Association meeting. Next Thursday, there's one of the Rinlow series of talks. That's at 7 o'clock next Thursday. Could be the well. Otherwise, if there's no more questions, thank you to the team. Thank you to the audience. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Carol being the hostess. Controller. Yes.
You're welcome. I've just got to figure out how to do the recording now.
Okay.
Night all.
Yeah. Cheers.